What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Ryan, and today we're going to be looking at one of my most favorite decks to play so far in set 5, and it has pretty good matchups against the ones that are very meta right now, and it's going to be the new version of Mufasa. Now, we had a video before release where we kind of theorized what a Mufasa deck might look like, but now that there's been some tournaments played for set 5, we're going to take a look at today what a fully optimized set 5 Mufasa deck looks like. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and for watching. The support has been going crazy recently, and I really appreciate it. And with that out of the way, let's go right into the deck list. We'll have some gameplay against the AI and ink table, so you can have an idea about what we're thinking when we're drawing against certain matchups and how those matchups play. So starting off with the 1-drop, it's of course going to be the new Daisy Duck Donald's Date card. Whenever you quest with Daisy, not only do you get the 2 lore for the 1 cost, but also you will force your opponent to look at the top card of their deck and reveal it. If it's not a character, it actually goes to the bottom of their deck, meaning against certain decks, this is a very good way to get items, to get actions and songs to the bottom of the deck, so your opponent has less of a chance to see it when they need it, as they'll have to go through most of their deck in order to get to that copy, as now they'll have to rely on their other copies before they get to that one that you sent to the bottom. By now, anyone who's run an Amber deck in Shimmering Skies knows this is a super powerful tool and gives you a lot of early game pressure, questing for 2, having 4 health, and most decks need to specifically build in a way to answer Daisy because she's such a powerful card. And then next up, we're going to be taking a look at one of the first damage characters that we're going to be playing, and that's going to be Mulan, Injured Soldier. She enters the battlefield with 2 damage, meaning that just a simple 1 damage can take her out. If we're able to heal her, we can take full advantage of her 2/3 body, and if we wanted to, we could even throw in the Mulan Archer in Ruby to use as a potential shift target for this Mulan. There isn't one in this version of the deck, but that is something to keep in mind if you're looking to customize it for your own playstyle. I would suggest if you're going up against a lot of aggro decks and need a good board clear option, throw in a couple copies of that Mulan Archer. You'll be able to play it on top of this Mulan very early into the game and easily clear out your opponent's board. Now, since we're playing Ruby and we have a lot of high strength characters in the deck, it only makes sense to play the Flynn Rider Frenemy from Ursula's Return. He's got the ability at the start of your turn, if you have a character in play with more strength than your opposing characters, you gain 3 lore. This is a good passive lore gain option for Ruby decks, especially when you combo it with some of our hard hitters like our Gaston, like our Chernobyls, and even as early as turn 3 with the classic Flynn Rider into Sisu play. Alright, and then another damage character that we're going to take a look at is going to be Mother Gothel, Withered and Wicked. She is a 3/4, but enters play with 3 damage on her, meaning she's essentially a 3/1 until we're able to heal her. But this card, comboed with Rapunzel, is going to be able to give us the maximum benefit for maximum card draw. So it only makes sense to use this card with Rapunzel for a perfect turn 3 into a turn 4 play. But before we get to our 4-cost characters, we do have to talk about some of our 3 costs, and the first one's going to be actually a discount version of that Rapunzel. It's the Julieta Madrigal from last set. She has a similar ability to Rapunzel. When you play this character, you may remove up to 2 damage from any character. And if you remove damage, you get to draw a single card. So a little bit worse than Rapunzel's ability. But since we do have 2 early game characters that enter play with damage on it, it's nice to have an additional option to heal that damage and take advantage of their higher stat lines. And then next up, one of our one-ofs that we're going to talk about here is going to be Pongo, Determined Father. Once per turn, you may pay 2 ink to reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a character, you can put it in your hand. Otherwise, put it to the bottom of your deck. Since we're playing 52 characters, we have a high likelihood of hitting a character card with Pongo, which will allow us to have a little bit extra card draw. You don't even need to exert Pongo to use his ability, so it can be a great way to get a little bit extra cards in your hand, especially since we're not running any card draw besides the ones that revolve healing characters. I alluded to this next card a little bit earlier. It's going to be the 3-cost Sisu Emboldened Warrior. She's a 1/4 but gets an additional strength for each card that your opponent has in their hand and quest for 2. Early game, especially if your opponent's played something like a Friends on the Other Side, or if maybe they've just hit you with a whole new world, it has tremendous strength, able to take out most characters on the board in one go, as well as almost guarantee you're going to be able to get that passive lore with the Flynn. And if this card survives long enough, it's going to be our shift target because we are playing with copies of the big Sisu for some board wide removal. Since this is an inkable card, we'll jump this back up to 4 copies, making it one of our more reliable plays on turn 3. And then next up, coming in as our only 4-cost character, it's going to be the Rapunzel, gifted with healing, the staple card for any Amber deck because it is so strong. When you play her, you can heal up to 3 damage for a single character, and based on how much damage that you heal, you get to draw that many cards. So if you combo this with the Mother Gothel, you can draw all 3 cards and heal her up to full, making her one of the strongest cards to include in any deck like this. And then a Mufasa deck would not be complete without the Mufasa Betrayed Leader card. He is just a 3/3, but when the character is banished, you can reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a character, you can play that card for free. They do enter play exerted, but if they have entered the battlefield effects, they still take place. And then if it's not a character, it'll go to the bottom of your deck. Since we are running with 8 potential cards that are not characters, we want to try and get as many of those as possible into our opening hand, so we have less of a chance to hit them with Mufasa, and we can almost guarantee that we're going to hit a character, and potentially a very useful character, whenever this one gets banished. He also quests for 2, making him a very high priority target. For our opponents, the only way that we really get around getting the benefit from Mufasa is if he's put into the inkwell instead of banished, or maybe if he's put back into our hand or to the bottom of our deck. But in most scenarios, we're going to try to get him banished so we get that free character play from the top of our deck. Following up on that Mufasa card, another staple for Ruby decks is going to be 4 copies of Maui, Hero to All. This is just a great card to get out on the field. It's inkable, it has Rush and Reckless, and with a 6 attack, is going to be able to take out most exerted characters in one go, unless they really are one of the late game targets that your opponent's playing. This has been a staple card for Ruby since set 1, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. There's a very similar Hercules card to this, which is a little bit worse because he's uninkable and he has less health. So if you like that one more instead, feel free to mix it up and do maybe 3-1 or 2-2. But in general, Maui is going to be the best option for this specific slot. All right, and then a card that I was actually very surprised to see being played in this deck, it's going to be the 6-cost uninkable Hydra, Deadly Serpent. This is a card from Into the Inklands, and whenever this card is dealt damage, you can deal that much damage to a chosen opposing character. He has 5 health, so potentially if you're challenging with Hydra into something, you can easily make it a 2-for-1, or if he's the target of multiple board-wide ping damage spells like your Tinkerbells, your Grab Your Swords, you actually get to retaliate and deal that damage to the opposing character, making it so they're really going to need to be precise with their order of operations to avoid taking unnecessary damage. And since we have the potential to play this card for free with Mufasa, this is a card that I'm really excited to see actually be included in one of these tournament winning decks. And then another 6-cost uninkable card is going to be the 1 copy of Lady Tremaine. When you play her, your opponent has to choose one of their characters and banish them, which gets around things like ward. So if they only have the 1 character in play and it has ward, they have to select it. But since we don't normally have control over what character gets selected, there'll only be 1 copy of this in the deck. She also quests for 2, making her a very good mid-game card that can keep the tempo up and keep questing for a significant amount. Now, your preferred 6-cost uninkable card that you're going to want to play is going to be Madame Medusa, because when you play her, you actually get to choose which character to banish as long as they have 3 strength or less. So her and Lady Tremaine have both their pluses and minuses, but being able to choose a specific character, especially if your opponent's got things like a Hiram on the board, maybe even getting rid of that Daisy Duck, opposed to if your opponent goes wide and you have just Lady Tremaine to play, it could be a little bit of a hassle because they get to choose their worst character on the board and get rid of it instead of us choosing when we play Madame Medusa. All right, and then next up, finally back to the inkable cards in the 6-cost slot. It's going to be Maximus, Team Champion, a new card for Shimmering Skies, and he has the unique ability at the end of your turn, if you have a character in play with 5 strength or more, you'll gain 2 lore. But if you have a character in play with 10 strength or more, you actually gain 5 lore. This card combos really well with being able to surprise your opponent and get that 2 lore instantly when you pass the turn, because the effect happens at the end of your turn and not the beginning of your turn like Flynn. This card in theory would also really benefit from a support deck, because you'd be able to give all the strength from those support questers to a single character on your side of the field. If you can get it up to that 10 strength threshold, you'd be able to get the 5 lore in addition to all the questing lore you got from your support characters. Now this Mufasa deck isn't using any support characters, but I think something like the Mickey Mouse leader of the band would be really cool to include, as we could even choose something like our Sisu Emboldened Warrior that could potentially have like 5 attack based on the cards in your opponent's hand, and then when it quests, it could give that 5 attack to something else. And if it goes over 10 and we have Maximus in play, that's an extra 5 lore that we get just for playing this card. Moving on now from Maximus, it's going to be Stitch, Carefree Surfer, 4 copies of this, because the deck is looking to play so many characters. We can normally take advantage of the Ohana ability, which is when you play this character, if you have 2 or more characters in play, you can draw 2 cards. Also, being one of our higher cost characters in the deck, this is going to be a classic target for hopefully Mufasa, as playing this off the top not only gets a big body on the board, but also potentially gets you 2 extra cards for the card draw, which can be really huge to swing certain matchups. Alright, and then like I said earlier, because we do need some board wipe in the deck, they've included 3 copies of Sisu Empowered Sibling. You can get Sisu out just a little bit earlier with the Shift 6, but even if you play her at 8, the ability to banish all opposing characters with 2 strength or less is just super strong, and she's a 3 quester, meaning she's going to be one of the key characters late in the game to try and seal up the win. And then next up, we do have just 2 one-of copy characters to talk about. The first one's going to be the 9-cost Gaston Pure Paragon. That came out with Shimmering Skies. He is a character that has 10 strength all by himself, and with his ability, A Man Among Men, you could potentially play him as early as turn 3, because for each damage character that you have in play, you pay 2 less to play that character. So if we're able to play multiple Mulan injured soldiers, maybe we get a Mother Gothel onto the field. Now instead of 9 ink to play him, you could take it down all the way to even 3 ink to play this card. He has Rush as well, so he'll be able to take out anything in one go and quest for 2 super early in the game. This is a card I love to see early in my mulligan, especially if we have multiple copies of that Mulan, if we have that Mother Gothel in our hand. And then no character deck would be complete without a single copy of Chernabog Evildoer, the 10 cost 9/9 that costs 1 less for each character that's in your discard pile. And when you play him, all those characters get to come back into your hand, giving you an amazing way to not only hit your one-of characters again, but also avoid milling out, which can really change the tide of the game. Playing this card for 1 or 2 ink and getting all those strong characters back into our deck is just too good not to include in the deck. Questing for 3 as well. Typically once this gets onto the field, it is the prime target for our opponents, because otherwise we're just going to be able to quest with it nonstop and win the game. Now this version of the Mufasa deck does have songs and items in it as well. It's going to be 4 copies of Teeth and Ambitions, giving us the ability to not only just damage our character, but also deal 2 damage to an opposing character, making things like our Gaston cheaper, giving us a target for Rapunzel and Julieta to heal, while also being able to take out early game threats that our opponent has. And then just to make our characters that much cheaper to play, they've also included 4 copies of the Lantern, which when you exert the item, you pay 1 less for the next character that you play. And if you have multiple lanterns, you can actually combo this, so you could even get them as cheap as 2 or 3 less than they're supposed to be. Since we're playing with 4 copies of Lantern, I would typically recommend maxing out at around 6 ink, unless you really need to get like your Stitch, or maybe your Gaston only has 1 damage character on the board, where you don't have a shift target for that Sisu. But most of the time we don't want to pay max price for those cards, so capping out at 5 or 6 ink isn't the end of the world if we have lanterns on the field. I've played quite a few games with this exact deck, and there are a couple tweaks that I talked about in the video that I would make, or that I could make based on how it feels when you're playing. But all in all, this is a very smooth deck to play. It plays very well into Steel Song, very well into Ruby Amethyst, and as long as you get a Lantern early, you're pretty much able to keep up with aggro, because our higher cost characters are going to be able to clean up the board state very easily, making it very hard for them to get the final lore to win the game. Now let's hop over to Ink Table, where we can play against some of the meta decks and see how this deck matches up against it. Our first one is going to be against Steel Song, and then after that I'll include the Emerald Amber deck, hyper aggro Under the Sea deck that we've seen. It's a very popular deck online, although we haven't really seen it place and be played a lot at tournaments yet, but I'll include it here just in case that does pop up in future events as well. All right, so we have Ink Table loaded up now against Steel Song. They're going to be starting first, we'll go second, and in our opening draw before we mulligan, we actually get Teeth and Ambitions and 2 Lanterns, which is really good for a Mufasa deck. If we can pull those cards into our hand very early, that means we don't hit that with Mufasa when we have a Mufasa. So I think the only card that I actually would get rid of here would be the Flynn, just because we have a turn 1 play in Daisy, a turn 2 play with Mother Gothel, or we can play our Lanterns and then play Rapunzel. Cool, and we get a Hydra. So on turn 4, if we have the Lanterns out, we can actually play that Hydra as well. Since we're playing against Steel Song, I'm going to go ahead and ink the Mulan and play the Daisy. If we can get a couple good quests with Daisy to get some of the songs to the bottom of the deck, that'll be perfect. Let's see if we draw some ink here. We get a Mother Gothel. I think I'm going to ink it and just play a Lantern here. The ability to play Mother Gothel next turn for free when I get the next Lantern out is going to be really good. And we'll just quest with the Daisy, see what we hit. We unfortunately give them a Rooster, which is a little bit of a downer, but that's okay. They're going to Strength of the Raising Fire our Daisy. Alright, and now we have actually another Teeth and Ambitions in hand. We can go ahead and ink one of them because we don't need that. We will play the Lantern. And then all we need to do now is just use one of the Lanterns. We'll play the Mother Gothel, and hopefully we don't get hit with any songs that'll do a ping damage. We pull a Stitch with their Daisy, which is nice. They play that Rooster that we got them earlier. And it looks like they're just questing. They don't have a damage song in hand, which is pretty good. Let's ink the Stitch. That way we can play both the Rapunzel. We'll heal the Mother Gothel. Then with our Lanterns, we can actually play the Flynn as well. And then Mother Gothel can actually sing Teeth and Ambitions. We'll give her the 2 damage. And I'll actually get rid of... Let's get rid of the Queen, just in case they have a big Queen that they'd be ready to play. I also could have saved Teeth and Ambitions for Hydra, because I'd be able to basically double up on dealing damage with it. They're going to get rid of most of our board with a Grab Your Sword. And they actually hit one of our Lanterns with Daisy. So unfortunately not going to be able to play that. But next turn we can play Medusa. We have 2 Hydras as well, but they are kind of threatening game right now. So I need to get rid of that. Probably either the Daisy or the Allen. We'll play the Medusa. I'm going to get rid of the Allen, just because Daisy will give us another card. And I'm going to ink the Mulan, because potentially, if we get another ink next turn, we'd be able to play the big Sisu. And I'll just actually quest with Rapunzel, because the 1 damage is actually not going to help us survive them in a game-winning scenario. I'd rather just get 1 step up on our lore. We pull a Gaston, who will be at least 2 cheaper because of this Rapunzel. We managed to luck out and get some ink there with Maximus. So now we can play Sisu to clear the board. And then I could have taken Madame Medusa and put her into another character. They play a Alan Adele. Luckily we get another Sisu here. So we can actually just repeat the same play. Play the Sisu. No shift because we want more more lore. And we will just continue to quest. And now if they can't answer this, we actually put ourselves in game winning scenario with 6 between the 2 Sisus. And we will close it out because they don't have a damage ability. So so that game we actually lucked out. Even after a pretty bad start, we were able to come back with our more impactful characters on the back end. Let's load up that Emerald Amber deck and see if we can pull off a win going second against that as well. All right, so we have Ink Table now loaded up against the Emerald Amber deck. And our opening hand, we do get a Teeth and Ambitions, a Lantern, which I'm definitely going to want to keep. We also get a Daisy, and then we've got Mufasa. Probably going to get rid of the Stitch and the Sisu. And then we'll keep this 1-cost Mulan just to guarantee that we have something that's an easy ink. All right, and we pull Madame Medusa and Hydra, which isn't too bad. We can get them out turn 5 because of the lanterns that we'll be playing. We're going to ink our Mulan so that we have a turn 1 play, and we'll play a Daisy Duck as well. Now, when they quest with Daisy, we actually have a higher chance of not hitting Lantern or Teeth, which is pretty good. And here comes a Julieta Madrigal. All right, so we can actually just ink the card that just came in, play the Lantern, and then use the Lantern to play our next Daisy for free. And then we can do the same thing back to them and quest with a Daisy, and we actually get rid of a Bare Necessities. Awesome. So next turn we have another Lantern to play. We've just pulled a Julieta from the Daisy again. I might actually challenge with one of these Daisies into Curse Merfolk just to prevent some of the lore gain. And we can actually get rid of Julieta because we pulled a Rapunzel instead. I'm going to ink Teeth and Ambitions because we can't target the Prince John, and Daisy has more health than that anyway. Although it would give us an easy target for Rapunzel to heal up. So maybe instead we'll actually just ink Mufasa. And then we can play our Lantern. And then I'll challenge Daisy with Daisy. And then ideally we can get a Teeth and Ambitions onto our... Nope. They actually pulled another Bare Necessities. But what I was going to do was get another 2 damage onto Daisy, so we have a full heal. We don't have that luxury, unfortunately. So we will just do a single another damage. Do I need to ink here? I'm going to go ahead and ink Sisu. And then we'll just play Rapunzel onto Daisy. And I should have used the Lantern because I actually would have access to play Teeth and Ambitions on this turn. So that was a bit of a misplay there. and then we will quest with our Daisy just to try and keep up a little bit with their lore. And we get them to get another Daisy. They get the discard Daisy, which is not the end of the world. We'll get rid of, they've already have 2 bare necessities in the inkwell, and they have no more ink to play. So they can't play like a Ursula to get us to discard a song. So I'll just get rid of Hydra. And then hopefully we can play that Teeth and Ambitions. We'll just get Rapunzel to sing it. Get rid of their Daisy. And then we can play Madame Medusa to get rid of like their Naveen. Let's ink a Flynn. Alright. So we can go ahead and use a lantern. Use 2 lanterns to play Madame Medusa. We will get rid of the Naveen. Rapunzel will sing Teeth and Ambition. We'll put 2 damage onto her. Get rid of the Daisy. And then we'll give them some chances at characters. Hopefully we can hit some songs though. We hit Ariel, which is not good because we give them the option to pull songs now. They're going to put some extra damage onto Rapunzel, which is fine. This actually might end up working out for us, getting all these 2-cost characters onto the field, because we have Sisu this turn that we definitely can play. And we can just clean house here, and we can just continue to quest with the Daisies. We get a You're Welcome to the bottom of the deck. We give them a Flynn, which is fine. And then we just quest with Madame Medusa. And then next turn we have to 16 and then to 20. So if they don't have removal here, we're just going to end up winning. Cool. So even with that misplay, we were able to come out on top, going second against this Emerald Amber deck. As you can see, it's just very strong. If your opponent's playing any actions, Daisy Duck is able to just hopefully get them to the bottom of the deck. The only other hyper aggro option is going to be Amber Amethyst, which is mostly characters. And in that scenario, I probably wouldn't prioritize getting Daisy Duck into your opening hand, just because it's so risky to give them so many low cost characters. But that's not something you'll know until after the first game that you've played against them. You know what? Let's actually just include a third game here. We'll load that up against Amber Amethyst, and I'll try and play without the prior knowledge of what I'm playing against. All right, so we have the game now loaded up against Amber Amethyst Hyper Aggro. I'm gonna try and play as if we didn't know what we were playing against. So on our opening hand, we do have some pretty good opening lines. We get a Rapunzel, we get a Sisu into a big Sisu combo, which if we can get that out on turn 6 or even earlier with lanterns, that's going to be amazing. And then we have Daisy Duck, which will help us with early game questing until we find out that it's hyper aggro. Then we can just use her as an early game attacker. So I'll get rid of the Maui and one of the Rapunzels, and we'll see what we get. We get Flynn and Maximus, so helping out with a little passive lore gain. They're also inkable targets. So right now we'll actually just ink the Stitch, play the Daisy, and at this point we would have seen that they inked a Merlin and they played Daisy. So we can actually assume that they're playing some form of hyper aggro. They're going to give us characters with Daisy Duck, which is pretty good. And then our Daisy is going to be able to just attack into things, doing chip damage here and there. We get a Pongo for some additional card draw, and we get a Mufasa. So since we know we are playing against hyper aggro, we want to prioritize getting this Sisu into big Sisu out as early as possible, which means we do need to get to a lantern. So Pongo is not going to be the best option for us on turn 3. Instead, I think I'm going to play Mother Gothel just so we have something on turn 4, and Daisy will challenge into Daisy and we'll just pass. If we do hit our big Gaston, having these 2 characters with damage on them is going to come in clutch, allowing him to get on the field for very cheap and rush take out one of these guys. There's another Flynn, we'll just take that. And then I don't think we're going to be able to play Maximus this game, so we'll just ink him and we'll play a big Sisu, and then Daisy will take out the Lilo, shutting down that 2 quester. Mother Gothel unfortunately is just going to sit here until Rapunzel can heal her next turn. They get a Amethyst Chromacron for some additional extra card draw every turn. And we pull a Madame Medusa and a Lady Tremaine. So we have a pretty full hand here, but we're not hitting the cards that we need ideally to win this early enough. All right, so we have a Lantern, which is pretty good. We can ink one of the Rapunzels and then play the Lantern and play a Flynn. And unfortunately, we need to start dealing damage to their characters. So we'll get rid of the Daisy, we'll get rid of the Wendy, and we'll just challenge into the Magic Room. So now they only have 1 quest characters on the board. So we've slowed them down significantly. They still have the guaranteed card draw here. They're going to take out our Daisy, which is totally fine. Since we weren't questing with it, a real opponent probably would have kept that on the field. We get a Teeth and Ambitions, which is very good for us. And we get a Mulan. I'm going to ink the additional... This could be useful, because once we get the big Sisu out, we'll actually be able to go up in lore pretty fast. So I'll actually ink the Mulan, and then Flynn will sing Teeth and Ambitions. We'll deal 2 damage to Sisu, get rid of the Pascal, and then we can play the Lantern to play Rapunzel, healing Sisu. Looking at our options here now, we do have another Mother Gothel, or we have that Flynn. Let's get that additional Flynn onto the board, and then next turn, once they play more low-cost characters, we can clean them up very quickly with this Sisu. So let's just quest with our Sisu. We could have played her this turn, but they just had the Sven, so it wasn't really worth it for us to get rid of just the 1 Pascal character. Also, the additional card draw is great because we're able to get more attack power for the Sisu. Let's ink a Mufasa since we already have one. And then we can go ahead and make our Sisu a bit cheaper, clear out those new characters, challenge into the Sven, and then we'll play a Daisy. And then we'll just go ahead and quest. And here's where we're going to make up a lot of ground against this type of deck, because we're going to get 6 potentially from these Flynns, because our Sisu is the highest on the board. Yep, and we go all the way up to 12. So we would get to 15, 17, 18, 19, and 20. So playing the Flynn early actually came in clutch, allowing us to actually overtake them, and even going turn 2, not knowing that we're playing against a Amber Amethyst hyper aggro deck, we were able to turn the tables on them and come out with a win. So that does it for my favorite overall deck from set 5 so far that we've seen in tournament play. I think character decks in general this set are really strong because of all the people playing Daisy Duck in their Steel Songs, in their aggro decks. Being able to get all that additional card draw is perfect for what we want to do. If you enjoyed this content, please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We are closely approaching the 1,000 subscriber mark, and when we do, we'll give away our copy of the D23 collector set. All you need to do is be subscribed and leave a comment on our giveaway video, and that'll enter you in for a chance to win it once we hit that 1,000 subscriber milestone. I'm super excited for this week. We finally have most of these decks built in paper, so I can bring them online to Pixelborn Connect, and we have the grandmas visiting for the first time this week to help out with the newborn. So I'll be able to play a little bit more Lorcana than I have for the past couple weeks. So be sure to look out for those videos coming to the channel very soon. I'll see you guys next time. I hope you have a wonderful day, a fantastic weekend. See ya.